So there's a lot of content out there that we're recording, and I think that's going to happen in not and creating now too with generative models. We have to be able to find the right content that we need, because there's so much content creation, but finding the right content for the right use case is actually a huge challenge.
Synthedia.
Corey and I are going to tag team on this one a little bit. We're going to talk about accelerating synthetic content creation. So for those of you who don't know Veritone, wanted to just kind of give you a broad introduction to it. Veritone is a publicly traded company. We basically create and leverage AI solutions to address some of the biggest challenges that are facing various different kinds of industries. And today we're going to talk about media and entertainment specifically. But the core tenet here is that for complex problems, what we're doing is helping our clients, which are really big name companies such as iHeart, Fox, various different media organizations, to think about how they can include AI in their workflows so that they can have increased brand awareness, also increased reach, and really do things at scale. So the next slide really starts to talk a little bit about what we're doing for media and entertainment companies. So we've started thinking about this in 4 major buckets. What we're trying to do is we're really thinking about, Veritone started off as a company that was focused on indexing audio content and video content, as well as text, helping you organize that. So managing was sort of the first tenet of what Veritone started off as, helping you understand what you have and increasing efficiency to get the right video or the right audio or the right text for whatever the job might be. Particularly when we're talking about media companies and so on, they have vast amounts of data, but they don't know how to find the right image or the right video clip for the newscast, let's say. So increasing efficiency there, saving time and resources, and also helping find ways in connecting different pieces of content, whether they be in the same media or they be across media, voice and video, for example, and so on. So that was an early kind of an important piece of it. And of course, then monetizing it, right? Now, when we start thinking about the creation of synthetic media, or Synthedia, as you call it, Brett, basically, create is a big function of what we do as well. So creating content, synthetic content at scale, whether that's video content, audio content, text content. And what we're trying to do is increase the reach for our customers and boost their accessibility. Accessibility is something we don't talk about a lot, but really accessibility isn't just for people with disabilities. Accessibility can mean half the world is not literate. And so for them, having content that's voiced content actually increases accessibility to the content that these media creators are actually building. Monetization, of course, is a core tenet of what we do, not just improving revenue from the revenue streams that they have now, but actually also increasing retention and finding new revenue models in sort of by using AI. Innovation is another big reason our customers come to us, because one of the big things about Veritone is that we started off with a platform software called AIware. And AIware, you can think about it as sort of the brain. And what it's doing is plugging in different types of cognition for various different custom solutions. And so Veritone often is brought in where the problem is very complex and the company doesn't necessarily know how it's going to do all of these various different functions, and Veritone will come up with a custom solution. So the next slide, I want to double click really on create, which is what we're going to talk about today. So in creation, we have voice cloning, which is near and dear to my heart, and then also generative AI. So in terms of voice cloning, voice cloning, it is making a voice sound like a particular person, but also it's making that voice not only be accurate, but also making sure that that voice resonates with the audience that the customer is looking to reach. Whether that listener audience is looking for a neutral voice in terms of gender, whether looking for or trying have different languages to reach, dialects, accents, and so forth. So we're trying to scale the content creation ecosystem by having voice clones or different voice models available in these various different languages. So a very easy example of this is when maybe you're a podcaster and you want to have your content now generated in various different languages so you can reach more audiences. And so voice cloning is one way to do that. And in these cases, a generic voice won't do. And so they come to us to create a unique synthetic voice solution for them. It's also, again, increasing accessibility and expanding into new markets, just as in that example. In terms of generative AI, there's a lot of new work that's been created in the last year or so in the space of NLP or ChatGPT and so on. But generative AI is more than just language models. It's also generating new content, generating new images, taking already existing image databases and figuring out new ways to create new content from that. Okay, so I'm just want to walk you through a use case in the next slide, which is a company we started working for about a year ago now, Cameo. You all know Cameo in terms of cameos that are done by famous people and celebrities to send messages and birthday wishes and so on and so forth. Now, Cameo wanted to reach a family entertainment audience, and so they thought of animated characters. But one of the hardest things is to try to figure out how to get these animated characters to send these messages. And so they reached out to Veritone, and the idea was that we would be able to clone the synthetic, so the animated character's voice, and also figure out a way then to deliver those messages through a Cameo. And so we have a number of different characters that we've already started building. Some of the famous ones are from the Coco Melon I think that's through Moonbug and Blippi, and Ryan's World's also been created. We have a number of different media partners we're working with in order to create these various different Cameo Kids channel, essentially, is what has been done. I'm now going to pass it off to Corey because he's going to tell you that it's not just the voice, because in this case, they came to us thinking we need to clone the voice for these different characters. And then we'll be able to create this Cameo for Kids offering. But it wasn't just that. And that's really the power of bringing on someone like Veritone, because we can do not only that one piece, but the rest of it as well.
Great point, Rupal. I think what's really important to discuss is the fact that it's not just saying, hello, Rupal, thank you, or hello, Brett, thank you for your happy birthday wish, right? You have to have the animation, you've got to have the engagement from a visual cue perspective, and all of that needs to align. And so effectively, what we worked with them on is creating templates to understand how a birthday celebration wish would have specific backgrounds integrated, have specific tone of voice, and actually compile all of that into an engine. And so engines in our place are really called the models that are going into our distributed process. And just to give you a sense, Veritone processes around 11 years of media in a single day, every single day, as we kind of ingest that content. So from a distribution perspective, we're able to take all of these requests from the Cameo for Kids website, which is a form, package that into that personalized greeting, and deliver all of that within a matter of seconds and minutes, from the perspective of taking that, hey, hello, customer name or person's name, then kind of then driving all of those components together into a nice packaged output for those kids to engage and kind of really see some interesting things that happen. We're also doing this in sports as well, where we're taking metadata from a computer vision model and actually turning that into live commentary, pre and post match game reports and things like that. And so all of that really does end up going through a pretty robust and significant workflow. I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples of that, as well as a few demos in that area as well. And so let me bounce over into my voice app here. And so essentially what we have in this view is we have our interface prompt to the large language model. In this case, it's DaVinci. And so we can essentially use this to start testing out some creative ad concepts, some creative content concepts as well, just simply by typing in text into the prompt. And so by clicking this here, it's going to go out and actually make a request into that large language model. And then leveraging the website that I provided, it's actually going to go ahead and give me this summary. And so once I have this content, I can actually choose between different voices. We have our stock voices, as Rupal mentioned earlier, but more importantly, we have our premium and custom voices, which are actually used in more production scenarios as well. And so from a custom perspective, you can have a specific talent actually go in and train their voice to create a clone, and then you can leverage that at scale through these workflow processes as well. which, in our case, for our live sports events, we're doing that in sub 2 seconds from when we receive the event that's occurred from that computer vision model and actually drive that commentary after that. So it's actually faster than broadcast from that perspective. And so it really enables us to move very quickly in that space. And so typically this is kind of the testing ground, for example, where someone would come in and want to understand which voice is going to deliver, to Rupal's point earlier, to the specific demographic or target market that they're trying to reach. And so from there, what we would typically do is take that and work it into a larger workflow. I think we're all aware of some of the limitations from a token perspective in some of the earlier models of the GPT large language models. But effectively, as you go forward, you want to include more content, right? And so in this case, what I did was I created a recurring process that took the transcripts from all of our presentations at NAB, the NAB conference earlier this year. So that include, one-on-one interviews and presentations. All in all, is about 4.5 hours of content. We leveraged the large language model to effectively create a 4-minute summary of all of those presentations with a new voiceover that actually creates the summary of that content. So you can see here, it's kind of giving that high level overview of that about hour-long presentation that Sean had. And so then again, to Rupal's point earlier, it's not just about creating that voiceover. What we would then do is create a workflow that would combine this new voiceover with some of the frames and video that exist in our DMH repository that we store our actual recordings and presentations. So I'm going to give you guys a quick sample of that.
At the NAB Conference 2023, Sean King of Veritone presented on the use of generative AI in the media, entertainment, and advertising space. He discussed the history of generative AI, which dates back to 1932, and how ChatGPT has made it more consumer-facing. He also noted that the industry is projected to be worth $116 billion by 2032. King outlined 4 ways to incorporate generative AI into content journeys: creation, management, monetization, and innovation. He emphasized that generative AI should be used to augment, not replace, existing workflows. Lastly, he suggested that businesses should define their strategy and look for pain points to incorporate generative AI.
So as you can see here in this example, again, it's not just the voice, but we layered in some background music to kind of set the tone and the vibe. And then also layered in that audio with the frames as well. And so that's kind of one step of where we are taking that. And so if we go back into the presentation, I'll talk to you a little bit about kind of a more specific workflow that we have leveraged with a couple other customers and partners that we're working with. Essentially, what we can do is actually use the large language model to drive the narrative. And so effectively, we could say, hey, I would like to get a summary of this, this major sponsor's history at this large sporting event. And so, or we can actually say, from a influencer perspective, as someone has notes, they can say, generate me a summary of the weekend I spent at this new hotel that I was shooting some influencer content for. And so once that narrative is actually generated, we then analyze that for finding people, places, and things that were generated from that essentially net new piece of content. What we then do is then, as Rupal mentioned earlier, if we have a solid management approach to the content that has already been created, so in this case, it's footage from the sporting event, we can actually go in and find specific in and out points of the frames where a person's face is, where a specific logo shows up on the screen. And then we can take that data and actually timeline correlate it from an in and out perspective to create a net new clip from the existing content. So that has huge implications on our ability to generate highlight reels, match summaries, overviews, and as you saw, giving people a way to engage with that old content. And now it's kind of, to Rupal's point earlier as well, we can take that and generate new revenue models and revenue streams around that content. And again, all of that can be programmatically done. So whether or not you want to have someone effectively review those as they go out, you can apply the other models we have in our ecosystem, such as brand safety, content moderation, summary, and topic summary analysis, so that you really can get a sense of assuring that the content that's being produced is aligning with the outcomes that you're expecting to generate that content for. And so from a generative perspective, we're actually developing an ecosystem around media and entertainment and a few key personas that we are looking to drive some additional expertise and capabilities in to enable them to deliver more quickly and accelerate that content creation journey. So from a creator perspective, they can get some specific inspiration about a specific topic. From a legal and client compliance perspective, you clearly only want to present things that A, you have the rights to, B, that potentially align with the engagement that you're working with. So maybe a specific channel that you are pushing to needs to have strict guidelines on what content. Maybe you're producing media for children. Maybe there's specific guidelines. Maybe you're going to be showing this content on an airplane, so it needs to be generally suitable for all audiences. From a content production perspective, I think that's what the last couple of slides were and the demo were essentially about, is kind of helping those individuals index and find the right content for the right time. And then thinking from a full circle perspective, how a content analyst will review the content that's been produced, understand the attribution or the lift or the engagement that's going on with that, and then start to understand how those key elements or attributes of that content can then be applied to future content. So it really does create a nice learning loop here. And it's all kind of driven by Veritone's Media Lake, large language models, and our ability to quickly create workflows that align and add policy. So again, you want to make sure that the way your staff is engaging with those large language models is aligned with the business use case, right? You don't want them just asking general questions. Then you also want to make sure that the things that are being generated from that large language model align with the outcomes that you are looking to achieve. And so one of the last things that I'll talk about here is the Automate Studio, which is our low code environment. And this is part of our aiWare deployment. And this enables you, in this example, I'm actually creating a video quiz from the transcript of a specific episode of content. And so we take that transcript, we summarize it, we ask the large language to create a quiz. Those questions are then voiced, and then you can see in the lower left-hand side of the screen that the questions actually end up on the screen, and they are timed so that the question is asked, you have your multiple choice questions, gives the user like 20 seconds to respond, and then for another couple seconds, we actually show the actual output on screen. And so from that perspective, it's completely automated. And again, that's a way to create monetizable content for a YouTube channel or other distributions based on existing content from an archive.
Awesome. That's great stuff. Thanks so much, Corey and Rupal. I really like that. Now, here's what I'm taking away from this. So first of all, scale, right? Process, policy, workflow. It's so interesting, Rupal. We've been talking about this for a long time. It was always just like, do people like the voices? And now we're talking about, oh, could I distribute this ad in 10 different languages in 40 countries, with one recording? Or could I localize this to 1,000 local media markets by just having this celebrity or this TV person or radio or TV personality's voice just say the local town's name every time?
Yeah, scale. I mean, it's not just voice, right? It has to fit in. And I think a lot of the early discussions we had were, so how are they going to use it? So they want a voice. So how are they going to use it? And where do they have is the latency right? All of those things were some of the earlier questions. And I think that now it's really about, well, where does it fit into what they're doing now? And how can it improve what they're doing right now? DMH, by the way, for those who may not know, is the Digital Media Hub. And that's what Corey was saying is the 11, what is it, 11 hours, Corey, or 11 million hours? I don't know how
11
much.
years.
11 years. Oh, 11 years. That's way more
About
than
100,000 hours of content.
Yeah, in a day. So there's a lot of content out there that we're recording. And I think that's going to happen and creating now too with generative models. We have to be able to find the right content that we need, because there's so much content creation, but finding the right content for the right use case is actually a huge challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, both you and Corey talked about essentially the digital asset management solution that we have, or that you've developed over the years, and it really been known for many years. And it's really interesting that with generative tools, generative AI tools, you can repurpose some of that. You can turn it into some of these sizzle reels, kind of like what you did for the NAB presentation, and maybe stitch some things together that typically would have just been searched for, and they try to figure out how to use it, and then they discard it or they can't find it. But now you can actually create new content from the content that you already have.
Yeah, create new content, also help some of the advertisers find where did that, where did that content go? Where was it seen? Was the placement useful? I think there's a lot there that we don't quite know. I think people are spending a ton in marketing, but not knowing what the ROI on that marketing is. And I think this is another way where synthetic media is actually going to play a huge role.
Yeah, and I do like this too, because I'll just say my observation is what you just presented is we're looking at synthetic media, generative AI, and there's a lot of experiments out here. This looks like a production ready capability you can use today. And so that just shows how quickly this market is maturing.
For sure. And as Rupal was mentioning earlier, right, we have our Veritone One agency that works in ads. We have our monetization department that uses those clips that we see indexed. And that's why you'll see watching, some of the NCAA championships, you'll see, Veritone logo from some of the clips we provide and a lot of the documentaries in sports as well. And we also do live broadcasting. So it's really like all of these gamut of things that are coming into our platform, we're able to index quickly and then surface that for use. So it's really kind of the full service end to end of the full media supply chain.
All right, everyone check out Veritone. It's been really cool. Great to have you here, Rupal. Great to have you here, Corey. I don't think I've seen you since last fall. So really happy to see how quickly this is all advancing.
Thanks so much for having us, Brett.
Thank you.
All right.
Synthedia, the business and technology of generative AI. Generative AI, synthetic media, large language models, image generators, virtual humans, voice clones, deepfakes, ChatGPT, and more.